What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of Venom: Let There Be Carnage, the newest film directed by, of course, Andy Serkis. Now, before we begin, if you like this channel, awesome, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell top to find what's coming in next. If you like any of these videos, awesome, hit that like button, as well as commenting below any video to watch, including this one. So, I made the decision before we get into this review. I'm going to talk about the mid-credit sequence at the very end of this review. I will put in the notes or in the comment or the description where it begins. So if you don't want to hear about it, you have not seen the film because it has just come out, don't watch it because it's very spoilery and it's very important to, Venom itself. So I just want to give you that warning now. But this film, Venom: Let There Be Carnage, of course, is the sequel to the highly successful, surprisingly enough, original film. That film made $800 million. And of course, they're going to make a sequel. Why wouldn't they? It's Venom. Venom's a very popular character. So this film takes place about a year later. Of course, Eddie Brock and Venom have become the perfect symbiote, perfect pairing. But they're like college frat kids where they don't seem to get along with each other, or maybe they're a little bit like brother and brother where they're just constantly like berating each other. Venom is become the most wisecracking superhero, super anti-hero, whatever you want to call him, in history. He's constantly berating Eddie Brock. Eddie Brock tries to throw jabs back at him, but it doesn't go very well. So in the process, we have a story of Cletus Cassidy. Now, Cletus Cassidy, as we know, turns into Carnage eventually, but him and his love, who's played by Naomie Harris, who plays Frances Barrison, are mutants. They are individuals that were taken away from each other, and of course, Cletus Cassidy has a vendetta to get her back. So he becomes a murderer. He goes to jail. He befriends for some odd, weird reason, Eddie Brock's character. And not to spoil too much, he somehow, through some means, if you watch the PlayStation clip, he becomes Carnage. And we get a story about how Eddie Brock and Venom have to coincide with one another, as well as trying to deal with Cletus Cassidy's Carnage character, who's trying to get back his love. Now, we also have returning characters like Michelle Williams, who plays Anne. We have, of course, Stephen Graham coming on in this movie, playing Detective Mulligan, and Reid Scott, who plays Dan Lewis. But this movie, in essence, is what everybody has wanted for quite a while, which is Carnage. Carnage, outside of Venom, is one of the coolest symbiote / villains in the history of Marvel Comics, at least my personal opinion. I think he's awesome. I think he's brutal and violent. I think this movie should have been R-rated, and he breeds really disturbingly cool kind of kineticism, and it was something I was really looking forward to, even though as I've said, I hated the first original movie. I thought it was awful. The whole lobster fish tank stuff I did not like. So Andy Serkis coming into the mix with this film, I was on board with, because Andy Serkis is a talented individual. We know him for playing Gollum, for whatever sakes. And I still went into this movie very skeptical. The trailers really didn't do much for me. I found out this movie is like 90 minutes long with credits and so on and so forth. So I'm like, all right, so we're gonna get another really terrible movie with some really shoddy characters and so on and so forth. And the reviews have come out and they've been pretty positive, actually. Some reviews have been about what I expected, but for the most part, this is a 78% Rotten Tomatoes, which is quite good compared to the 44% of the original movie. And I will say this to leave it non-spoiler in my review. I don't like this movie. I think it's pretty awful, but I still had fun with it, which is really strange to say. And I think the reason for that is I know what I'm getting myself into this time. The first movie, I really didn't know that it was going to play like a very campy B-level superhero movie. And so going into this movie, knowing Andy Serkis for who he is, knowing that he's trying to keep the mythology and the characters very much in line with the way this character works in this universe, I was all right, fine. I'm gonna have to get past the whole fact that Brock is like a really weird, out there kind of character. I had to get used to Venom being like this very, he's almost like that abusive brother in a lot of ways, but he's just kind of, he's like throughout the entire movie, he's wisecracking jokes throughout the movie, but he's also giving Brock advice to, Anne's character, who's barely in this movie. She has like a small part, as you see in the trailer, but it was just a really strange thing to go, I hate this movie, but it's not going to be my top 10 worst of the year. That is absolutely not, because this is a much more improved movie. I was really shocked by that. I was like, holy cow, that's incredible to actually be able to do something like that. But the other thing that kind of surprised me is even though even though we first introduced to Cleus Cassidy and Francis's character in 1996, those characters 20 years later in 2016 or 24 years later, however they want to position it, we're supposed to believe that Woody Harrelson, who was born in I think 1961, is supposed to be in his 40s or 30s, and it just doesn't work. It really feels off center. But the thing about Woody Harrelson is even though he plays a very older character than what he's supposed to be playing, he's so weird and goofy and offbeat that his character just kind of works in the movie. Thank God they get rid of the clown hair that he had in the original movie. I just kind of enjoy his character because he is sympathetic in a lot of ways. He has a really tragic back history, and he is one of those individuals that really just kind of is there to be a plot device, a enemy, because he doesn't really have a very good dimensional backstory, good dimensional progression through that story. How he becomes Carnage is really strange and really, it doesn't make any sense. And how they're like talking about mutants and stuff like that. It really feels like they just threw stuff at the wall to see if it would stick, and it's not successful. But the use of Carnage himself is quite well done. The CG is really just Sony CG. It's like what you saw in like Spider-Man and stuff like that. I want to say that I really enjoyed when Cletus turns into Carnage. I think it's scary. I think it's really well done. I think that it's really, really awe-inspiring to watch, like the tentacles and the tendrils and stuff like that pop out of Cletus, and just how he uses them like the Spider Man character with the 4 other arms or whatever he had in the I think Avengers movie. And it's like when you go up against a character like Carnage, it's a really scary character, and I kind of enjoyed it. I thought it was a really neat character. I thought it was a really well done character, and I thought the amount of time you see him on screen, which is probably 30 minutes of the movie at the most, because it's not a very long movie, is really effective. And when you get to the very end sequence of the movie, I thought that was a really fun sequence. Most of the times when they do these like fight sequences, they're not very long, and here it's just enough that you kind of are excited by what's going on. It's not as convoluted as the original movie, and it has some stakes to it, which is kind of nice. Some very familiar stakes that you've seen before, but some stakes just in general. But like I said, outside of that, Naomie Harris is fine. She's not really a thing in this movie. She's just there as a plot device for Carnage and Cleus Cassidy. And Stephen Graham's character, Mulligan, has an interesting kind of way he develops his character at the very end, which I found out about, which I might do in a part of that mid-sequence spoiler review. But otherwise, it's still just not a very good movie. It's still shoddy, and the plot is just like inconsistent and just weird. And this is from the writer of the original movie, so there's just a lot of holes in this plot, and everything moves so quickly that you're kind of put in a whiplash and stuff like that. And I don't know, the kind of confrontations between Venom and Brock get a little silly and a little out there and a little strange. And there's points when Venom's just kind of wandering in the city and people act like that's cool, and I don't know, there's inconsistencies in tone, I guess you could say. So that's my main issues with the movie. It's like the first one. The tone is just all over the place. It's very silly. It doesn't take itself seriously, and then when it tries to take itself seriously, it's just not very effective, and the music's not that great. And once again, Tom Hardy is just so over the top and silly and bonkers and weird that I think he is just in that zone where, like Capone, where it's just like, what are you doing? What is this? But people eat it up and people love it, and I can't really complain anymore because it's just not my cup of tea. And this character I love Venom, but I love Carnage more as one of my favorite villains. And yeah, it does some weird stuff, but this movie will make a lot of money, and it has a very, very interesting mid credit sequence, which I will talk about. But with that said, that is going to be my review of Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Definitely a much, much marked improvement to the original movie. Something that I will say is still terrible, but still has its moments. So that'll do it. That'll be my non-spoiler take on, of course, Venom, Let There Be Carnage. I will put a timestamp in for the spoiler section with all the mid-credit sequence talking about that, all really good stuff. But if you want to stop here, if you don't want to learn any further, hit the comments below. Tell me what your favorite Marvel character or what your favorite part about Venom. Did you like the original movie? All that good stuff. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next review. But otherwise, we'll see you in the spoiler review of Venom Let There Be Carnage. And so here we are, the mid-credit sequence, ending explains portion of this video. If you've not seen the movie, you do not want to know about the mid-credit sequence, do not watch it. If you don't give a crap, here we go. The one thing I do want to do is I want to talk about Stephen Graham's character real quick, because I was really confused about the ending of this movie with his character, because he's attacked, of course, by Naomie Harris's Francis' Shriek character, and she wants to get back at him because of course he's the one that shot her in the eye at the very beginning of the movie. But we see him on top of the scaffolding. He's been choked with a chain or whatever, and we see his eyes turn blue. And I was really confused by that. I'm like, is he another symbiote? Is he something more? Because it's very similar to the Incredible Hulk movie, where the character, the scientist character was, ends up being whatever he ends up being. And I was confused. So I kind of did a little bit of research, and there's rumors that Stephen Graham's character is Toxin. Now, what I could find on Toxin was he is a character that looks very similar to Spider-Man, which is very interesting. And that's all I could, he's a character that is another one of these characters that I don't know much about, but he's a symbiote, and he, he's a detective in the Wikipedia and stuff like that. So I'm guessing they're going to go with a Toxin character and maybe the next Venom movie, because this will be a very successful movie. Has all the same human abilities as Spider-Man and Venom. So, I guess that's where they're leaning. They changed his name or whatever they did. And yeah, I think that's what they're going to do with Stephen Graham's character. I think he'll come back as Toxin. So forgive me for not knowing much about that character, but there's so many characters in the MCU and in the Marvel universe that it's kind of crazy to even think about. But with that said, the ending explains. I know a lot of people complain that I don't actually do ending explains, but it is an ending explains when I talk about spoilers and stuff like that. So please forgive me when I go off on tangents. But here we are, ending explain. This mid-credit sequence was something I actually read about, but it wasn't confirmed. It was one of those things where I didn't want to tell anybody because it's a pretty big deal. And so to give a little backstory, the mid-credit sequence is right after the main cast is presented in the credit sequence, and Eddie Brock, of course, at the very end of the movie was on the beach, and here he is in a hut or a room of some sort on the same island, and he and Venom are talking, and all of a sudden something light changes, shifts, whatever you want to say, and all of a sudden the room changes into a much better room, and we see J. Jonah Jameson on the TV monitor, and then Venom and Eddie Brock, or at least Eddie Brock, sees Spider-Man, the Tom Holland Spider-Man, Peter Parker, on the screen as he's being unmasked by J. Jonah Jameson and, of course, Mysterio. Basically, what I've entailed, what exactly is going to happen is I don't know how Venom's going to play into Spider-Man. It's the No Way Home, but Venom has been brought into the MCU by Doctor Strange, or Peter Parker's mishandling of Doctor Strange's spell, and he of course was in a different multiverse, and now he's in the same multiverse as Peter Parker Spider-Man. So that leads into some really interesting concepts and points about what exactly is happening in Spider-Man No Way Home. And there's been rumors of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire and Jamie Foxx, and of course we know that Alfred Molina's in this movie, and of course Willem Dafoe is supposed to be in this movie. We're getting Sinister Six basically is what's going to happen, which is what Sony was leading up for in Amazing Spider-Man. And I want to see Venom being part of the Sinister Six or kind of showing up in No Way Home. It leaves me a little worried that this movie is going to be 3 hours long and is going to be so overstuffed that it's going to lose the weight of itself. I know we're really excited for this movie. I am, because I really want to see what is going to happen in this movie. But basically, Venom has been brought into this new universe, this new multiverse, this new dimension, and he licks the screen. Venom licks the screen, and he's like, lunch or whatever. He's going to eat Spider-Man, which leads into the great battle between Venom and Spider-Man that's always happened, in the comic books. But I think this is an interesting concept because not only is it bringing Tom Tom Hardy's Venom character into the Spider-Man universe. But if they're talking about what they're talking about, and that this might be the last Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, it makes for a perfect kind of lead into the next Venom or the next Spider-Man movie. If Sony brings back the property to Sony, with Morbius, and that whole conceit is already in the same universe as, of course, the Michael Keaton Vulture character. So this is going to lead into some very, very, very interesting, very insane conceits and concepts about what is going to happen to Spider-Man after Spider-Man No Way Home, and how that's going to affect it, and what Venom and Eddie Brock is going to do. Is he going to align with Spider-Man at some point? Because there's talk of Kraven the Hunter being in Spider-Man at some point. You know, all these kind of lead up to the mysteries are very unique and very interesting. But the minute that light shone, and even though I knew what was going to happen, I didn't know Doctor Strange's multiverse mess up, or whatever they call multiverse mix up, was going to be part of how Eddie Brock and Venom saw Spider-Man, of course, on TV. But it makes a lot of sense when, of course, I think Amy Pascal, who was the CEO of Sony, and Kevin Feige were talking about how Venom wasn't in Peter Parker's universe because he was in a different dimension. So now he's in Peter Parker's universe. So they were telling the truth, and now he's in there. So we're going to see how that plays out, and see maybe Eddie Brock and Venom trying to get into their own universe. But, you know, of course, Venom needs to eat, so he's trying to eat Peter Parker. So that is the mid-credit sequence. Like I said, people were going insanely gaga for it. They didn't expect it. I unfortunately spoiled myself, which I shouldn't have had, because I would have been more excited for it. I think it's pretty unique. I think this whole concept of what is going on in this new phase of Marvel, new phase of MCU, new phase of Spider-Man is absolutely some of the best stuff going on right now. And it's going to be intriguing and interesting to see how it all plays out. But that's the mid-credit sequence. That was the big reveal. That's what everybody is going gaga for, is now that the multiverse is exploding, we now have Venom and Eddie Brock in this new multiverse. So there you go. With that said, that is the ending explained of this whole entire series. Like I said, you know, of course, Carnage and Cletus die because Venom ate Cletus and he ate Carnage, which kind of sucks. I would like to see Carnage in a new movie. But Toxin as well should be showing up at some point. So anyways, that'll be my take on everything about Venom Let There Be Carnage. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said before, comments below. Let me know what you think of the mid-credit sequence now that you know about it. Let me know what you think of Venom Let There Be Carnage, if you decide to see it or if you have seen it. And yeah, that'll do it. If you like what you see in this video, hit the subscribe button and join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell top to find what's coming next. And as always, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.